What's up, you guys? We're back with another episode of Commas, a podcast. Again, unscripted, unedited, not filtered, all the things straight from the files of Sequoia and what is going on with the Frame Me business. So thank you guys so much for listening to the previous episode. I got a lot of outreach. Even our advisor reached out and he was like, let's have a meeting. Are you okay? So we are going to have a meeting. Actually, he just reached out and asked if we needed help, and we do, because that's what advisors are for. So yeah, what are we doing? So right now we are just really trying to figure out the fundraising strategy. I think I told you guys this on the last podcast. I've done so much content right now that I just don't even remember what is being put out, but try following me. So on the last podcast, we were in the midst of trying to figure out what the best fundraising vehicle was. We're focused on Silicon Valley. I told you guys we went through Founder University. So a little bit about Founder University and why I like this program so much is because it was more about the business. They would consider it a pre-accelerator. So it was less about fundraising and more about how to structure the business properly. And there were some things that I learned, which is crazy because I've had a venture-backed business before. I've invested in companies, but I'm still learning. And one of those things were just the way that you're looking at your gross market value versus your revenue, because a lot of people, you'll hear this a lot on in the Instagram streets. They'll be like, hey, my revenue is, or we got 100 million, no, never 100, but like, but like $1 million in profit, right? But that's not necessarily the case. So there's gross market value, which is like how much money did you generate? And then there's revenue, which is like actually the profit, right? So they made sure that when we were talking about our numbers, they're like, okay, cool. We want to understand your revenue, not your gross market value. So like your net, like how much did you actually bring in? And I thought that was like really eye-opening, because I've always been like, yeah, the revenue was blah, 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 but that's actually not your revenue, right? So that was really impressive. And then the other things about the program were just the collaboration, having a community and support system around you of other founders and entrepreneurs who are going through what you're going through, is specific to the business type that you're going through. So again, we are kind of on that marketplace SaaS cusp. So we sat in a lot of the marketplace meetings, but we also sat in some of the SaaS meetings. So we got to hear the best of both worlds and what everybody else is doing to grow their business. And for Frame Me, it's super important that we have those dynamics, right? Because we want to make sure that we're doing all the things correctly. And yeah, so that program was just amazing. And then we're just kind of pending, waiting to figure out if they're going to make the investment or not. So you guys cross your fingers, pray for us, send all the vibes up. Yeah, so that's that. One of the things that we did prepare very heavily for was diligence. So I actually want to go through due diligence with you guys just to kind of help you understand what you need to do when you're doing diligence. Every firm is different when it comes to diligence, and diligence just basically means they're looking closer into the business. It's kind of right, like if you got pre-approved for a loan and then they went into underwriting, this is like that, but not the same definition. But similarly, like they're seeing if you are going to do all the things necessary to make sure, or if you prepared yourself with all the things necessary to make sure that this is a viable business, right? So a lot of the things that we had to do, so our books were a hot mess, because when we first started the company, we had a business open under Novo, and then we switched over to Meow, and now we have a business with Chase. So we have like business bank accounts everywhere. So we had to like reconcile our books and then reconcile them on QuickBooks. And like my favorite new form, you guys, I know this is like real nerdy, but my P&L sheet. My profit and loss, because I can click through it and see, okay, this is where the profits are coming from. These are the losses. And like, you really realize like where you're spending a lot of money that is not necessary. You can go back and cut and scrub and like just kind of figure it out where to kind of massage it. My favorite new document, just so you know. So anyway, so some of the things that you need as you're fundraising on the VC side, you're going to need your articles of incorporation. Venture capitalists don't invest in any company that's not a Delaware C Corp just because of taxes. They find them more tax friendly. Other things that you're going to need is the cap table. They want to know what other investors are involved in the business. So do you have other investors? You know, maybe you raised an equity round, crowdfunding. Maybe you had some angel investors. Like, who else is involved? Because these are the people that ultimately your other investors will be in business with as well. So they want to know, like, who is making decisions? If you got people on the board, like, what is happening? So again, those financials, Financials are so important. So your profit and loss statement, your cash flow statement, your balance sheet, right? Those are like the three that you absolutely need. Again, my favorite, profit and loss, P&L. Yes, give it to me. Love it. So those are three you absolutely need. But other than that, you also need projections. They call them pro formas. So really just trying to understand over the next 3 years based off of whatever marketing metrics you have, sales metrics you have, what is driving, like what are your revenue drivers in order to get the business to break even to profitability, and they need to see that in the projection. So I use a platform called Finmark, and it's actually been really beneficial. You get to plug in all of your products and then the revenue drivers around them, and then you can attach those revenue drivers to different like marketing, performance, like things like that. So just real brief on that. Some other things like your brand assets, what are your media files, your ad campaigns. If you've like done any ads, we did like a boost one time for Framey. That's pretty much it. Everything else has been organic, hence the business, organic traffic from content. So everything else has been organic, but they still want to see it. They want to see if it performed. They want to see how you put that out, right? If you have any IP, so it's trademarks, they want to see those. Again, this is just real brief. There's a lot more details, and every single firm is different in terms of how they go about doing it. Market analysis. So this is an interesting one because firms technically have people in-house to do this. They're called analysts. So they basically dig into the market, look at your comps, and then they see, okay, well, where do you sit and why would you be viable versus your competitors? But this firm particularly asked for the market analysis, so we did it for them, and we put in the deck. Sales, they want to know the sales process, the sales pipeline, the sales collateral, like what are you using to drive those sales? Your team, they want an org chart basically, who's doing what, and then ultimately your tech stack. So most venture capitalists like to invest in companies that have a moat. So again, going back to that conversation yesterday about the services don't necessarily have a moat because there's no tech built around it, right? So you want something that's a unique differentiator that basically says, hey, we've built this thing and it's really unique in the market and this is why we think we're going to win, right? And so that's usually within your tech. So for us, we just did a architecture diagram so that they could see what our tech comprised of, and then just screenshots of the product and service and those types of things. So yeah, just real quick about how you would do diligence. Again, if you're going for the service-based business, you kind of have a different pathway. For a loan, they're going to ask you for very similar documents, right? Like the LLC, your EIN, things like that, but not too different. They're pretty one and the same when it comes to that. So that's where we're at. So we're waiting on their team to tell us what is happening. If they're going to ask us to pitch to Jason Calacanis, I actually already pitched to Jason Calacanis maybe a month and a half ago. And when we pitched, the business was not fully baked in terms of like the story. So he felt like it was a business that he had invested in already, like another company, not as a competitor, just like back in the day. And it's like, no, that's not actually who we are. We have a different approach to it. So now we had to like build out that story. So now we're waiting on that team to see what they want to do, but they'll do a $25K investment or 125 at 7%, which is standard for Silicon Valley. You'll see those types of turns with accelerators like Y Combinator, which is like one of the big accelerators that like everybody wants to be a part of. So waiting on that. And that's really where we are. We're going to have our meeting with our advisor tomorrow to kind of give him an update on what is going on with the business and just kind of keeping balance, trying to figure out work-life balance. There is no life on this side. There is a lot of work. I do try to go to the gym. I'll go to Lifetime and like do dance classes. So sometimes you guys will see that on my Instagram. I try to stay active in that way, but it is hard. Like it is so, I don't think it was as hard when I was an entrepreneur before. I think I was basically just kind of riding the wave because I was in an ecosystem of entrepreneurs. So it didn't feel like it. But because I'm in Atlanta, pretty isolated for the most part, other than when I'm in these groups are a part of the organizations. I'm also a part of Black Ambition, which is Pharrell's organization. So I'm a semifinalist. Leif and I are semifinalists in their company program. So we do have access to their group as well. And I'm also doing Afrotech, which is they have a founder group that they just started and launched that's like an exclusive group. So I am a part of a lot of groups, but then I'm also in my house versus being out in these streets. So I think that is something that, you know, I can feel a lot of, whereas before I wasn't feeling that as much because I was immersed with like actual humans, like walking the planet, right? So yeah, I think that's the biggest difference. But you do have to still be out in the streets regardless, right? Like I flew out to LA for BT Experience to network and talk to, really not necessarily network, but really to talk to people and see what the ecosystem was like in LA for creatives right now. Because when I was there before, I was immersed in the creative industry, and I hadn't been there since I left in 2022, the beginning of 2022. So it was time for me to fly back and like see what was happening, and it was interesting. It's a lot of AI. It's a lot of AI conversations. It's still very much LA. I had a meeting with Slauson and Co. Their GP Austin, who is really, really sweet. And the meeting was great. Again, they were still questioning the business because we just did not have clarity at that moment. And a lot of times with VCs, like there's the stages, but with VCs, they want clarity. They're like, we need you to be clear because we just don't want to think about your business. Like we want to help you, but we're not really here to be like another co-founder type of situation. But some VCs are. Like it just depends on who's investing, right? And I don't think that was their plight. I think they're more so like, hey, do you have it together? Because if you do, we can definitely consider this. So they had questions around when we were first talking to them, we were trying to target the creator, and then we since pivoted to the business owner because it just makes more sense. But they had questions around that, and they were the right questions. They've definitely had the right questions, but have been like really good at just being helpful, and that's what we want. Like any partner that we have come on board, we're not trying to accept just any capital. Now, granted, we're at the place where we really need the capital, but again, those are going to be lifelong partners. And I think they're thinking the same thing, right? Is this like somebody I want to be a partnership for, you know, the duration, at least business long, you know, the duration of this business. So we didn't, you know, push hard. We were just like, all right, we'll see you. I have had so many rejections that when someone's like I hadn't spent pretty much any of my life being rejected, right? Like, maybe here and there, but not to the magnitude of the type of rejections I've had lately. If somebody tells me no, I'm just like, all right, cool. Thank you so much for your time. Like, I have no reaction to it anymore. I'm like, all right, great. And have a great day. Yeah, I don't take it personal anymore. I just don't. I've grown like a very thick skin. And that's something that I just had to get into the groove of doing. But yeah, we're definitely still pushing. We're definitely still kicking. If you guys want to book videographers, you're a small business owner, you're listening to this, log on to frameme.co. That's FRAME.co. And you guys can book them, and we're happy to get you guys your content, right? So yeah, that is what is happening with us right now. We also might consider trying to raise again, because we tried this prior, but with different stipulations and angel round. We'll talk to our advisor about that tomorrow. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will keep you guys posted. Bye.